Okay, well, welcome everybody to the Kansas City Climate Protection Steering Committee. I'm Robin Ganal, chair of the committee, and I think we have quorum now, so I'll turn it over to Laura. I think we might have a couple joining late today, but Laura, if you could kick us off with a roll call, that'd be great.
Sure. Okay. Robin Ganal.
Here. Sorry, I took myself off mute too fast.
Michael Kelly. Kristen Riot. Her room is here. Okay. Beth Polly.
Here.
Bill Griffith.
Here.
Angela Crawford.
I'm here.
Ellen Fairchild.
Here.
Tom Griever. Bridget Sanderson. Oh. It's like Tom might be coming in now. Tom, are you with us?
I am, yes. Sorry, I
All
can't be on
right.
camera right now.
And it looks like Kristen is now with us.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay. So we definitely have quorum.
Great, thanks, Laura. Okay, our first item on the agenda today is to approve the minutes from our last meeting. So do I have a motion or any discussion about the minutes?
Move to approve.
Great, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the minutes have been approved. Let's see. The next item on our agenda is actually Michael's item to review his analysis of the public comment, all the public comments that were submitted. So while we are waiting for Michael to join, which we expect him to be any minute, I guess I'll just say how much I appreciate and the committee appreciates all the members of the community that took time to give public comment. And we have been working very hard over the last few weeks to go through all of them and incorporate them as best we can. So just wanted to say that while we're waiting for Michael, that we do appreciate everyone taking time to share their thoughts on the draft plan. And appreciate all my fellow committee members who have been working long hours going through all of them and meeting with the work groups, as well as I know the climate justice workers have been engaged in that as well and working with city staff. And so really appreciate all the teamwork going in to making this plan as good as we can. And I still don't see Michael, so if anybody else would like to add on to that, please feel free.
Well, I would add just thanks to Laura Ish in particular for the many hours that she's booked on this. Should we go on to the next
Okay.
item, Robin, and then circle back, do you think?
Yeah, let me. I was just going to see if I could ping Michael real quick because he said he'd be a few minutes late, but I hate to move on to our let's see, to our next topic without his analysis first. So I guess, see, I'm monitoring the. Well, Kristen, our next agenda item was really to go through the different work groups' final edits and see and have everyone kind of summarize them. So I guess we could move on to that and maybe get through one or two. I think we were thinking not to go through the edits line by line, but if folks could give just kind of a high level summary. And then after we do that, then we'd like to give any community member who's here today and would like to say anything the chance to give comments before then we, as a committee, vote on our final edits for the plan. That's kind of how I was thinking today would go. So with that, why don't we, Kristen, would you be willing to maybe kick us off with kind of summarizing the work group edits? Or
if Laura has the document, could she post it for me? That will help me a lot.
You want me to view it?
Yeah, the summary document. And here comes Bridget, and
Sure.
Ellen also was on our the Natural Resources Committee. So yeah, that'd be great.
And while she's pulling that up, can I ask a question? Are we going to vote on all the edits collectively, or are we voting on edits by section?
I guess that's up for discussion. Do you have a preference?
My preference would probably be by section, because I can be very supportive of a number of the sections, but maybe not all of them.
Then I think what I'd propose is, yes, after the public comment period, we could go through each one by one and take a vote. Does anyone disagree with that approach?
That's fine.
Okay. All right.
Can you all see the summary of natural systems plan changes?
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that. And Laura, Bridget, Ellen, please correct me if I get anything wrong or I don't devote enough explanation to it. But I know that one of the discussions that we had was trying to make the logical link between climate change and some of the recommendations that were in the plan, such as investing in biodiversity and the strength of ecosystems. If you're not familiar with environmental issues, you might not understand the link between climate change and the decline of various ecosystems like pollinators. So we went to some pains to explain that at a little bit greater length. So that's what the first paragraph is all about, why biodiversity matters. And then Laura, if you would scroll please a little bit, that's great. So the next several other things that we received a lot of input from the public on. One was about pervious versus impervious spaces and green space. And there was a lot of discussion about the city's experiments with green spaces already. And I see that Michael just joined us, Robin, so I don't know if you want me to stop. Or shall I go ahead?
I'd say maybe go ahead since you've already started, and then we could go to his analysis after that.
Okay, so someone had submitted some suggestions that we work more with pervious surfaces, that is surfaces like sidewalks that can actually absorb and infiltrate stormwater. And the city does have a lot, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but they have X amount of acreage devoted to those pervious surfaces, which have presented different problems related to maintenance of them. They tend to get kind of clogged and filled up with leaf debris and things like that. And so what we ended up recommending was that we develop a program to incentivize the use of more pervious surfaces and green space, and also be able to learn more about what was successful in terms of infiltration. In general, I would also say relatedly to that action N1-3 was just a lot of input about how we need more green space as a city. There was discussion, or there was a suggestion submitted about removing parking lots and replacing them with green spaces. And we had discussions about the feasibility of that, which may be a little bit later on in here. But let's go to N1.4. That's really the area where we were talking about actually increasing the green spaces that we have, and particularly the tree canopy. And we are wanting to coincide with the goal from the Urban Forest Master Plan, which stated 35% as our goal of coverage. Right now, the city has a tree canopy that's at the best, the high 20s, and declining rapidly. So we considered 35% when we wrote the Urban Forest Master Plan to be something of a moonshot goal, but it was the wish of from public input that we go even higher to that, toward 50% on tree canopy. And we would do that by having more robust tree preservation programs, planting programs, and a new policy, which is currently underway, which is a tree preservation ordinance, etc. And we also wanted, for the sake of our equity efforts, to underscore that we want to focus on historically underserved neighborhoods as a top priority, especially where heat islands exist. We talked a lot about rain gardens and the experience of 10,000 rain gardens, which I think that was a Mid-America Regional Council and other people promoted that maybe 7-8 years ago. And we ended up with maybe only 1,500 of those rain gardens being put in. And we know from experience that there's a lot of maintenance that's needed, and there's a lot of education that's needed for people to know how to install and maintain a rain garden. So our recommendation became educational, that we use educational materials that are already in existence to increase the number of rain gardens that get planted on private property. The next action on N1, there was a lot of input from some of our local soil experts on the value of healthy soil to help infiltrate stormwater. And then there was another comment later about the possibility of carbon sequestration through our treatment of soil. And that was another area where there needed to be a lot of education and advocacy. And I think maybe we still have a little bit more work to do on that soil thing. Do we not, Laura?
I think the soil thing is, as far as the action, I think this was kind of suggested as the wording was suggested, and we
Okay,
kind
the
of
next
went with
one. Yeah. Okay, so we talked about as a regular practice, the city in all of its sort of planting activities, nurturing the soil at the same time by applying compost teas and other methods that help to enhance the microbial life that is found in the soil. So a sentence was added to that effect. More soil stuff in N2.3. And I think really what I think Hillary Noonan and others were talking about is treating soil as part of an entire ecosystem, that these elements really can't be separated from each other. and the regeneration of soil needs to be kind of an ongoing thing. And that this should be part of when developers leave a property, that should be sort of potentially something that we could ask developers to do to make sure that the soil has at least initially been treated and would then potentially be subsequently treated by the homeowner, because maintaining healthy soil is kind of an ongoing process. Let's see, N2.4. I think this is kind of a summary statement that we've already gone over several of the points underneath this umbrella, which is that our city operations need to be revised to protect the ecological health of city managed landscapes, and also to encourage other public and private entities to do the same thing. So there's policy that needs to change, and there's also just education. We all, I think, need to be educated. I learned stuff going through this natural resource planning process myself that I didn't know about soil, for example. So lots of education. 4.3, I think this has already been in the plan for some time, but we added a little bit more wording that we wanted to encourage, incentivize, and or require the use of native plants on city property. And I think we added vacant lots, medians, and community wide in this latest round. And we stress the importance, all the different benefits of native plants there. There were a number of occasions where we felt that what was being suggested, like in actions 4.1 and 4.3, was beyond the scope of city capabilities, and that we needed to add MoDOT as a partner. And let's see. Laura, what could you bounce back up so I can see 4.1 and 4.3? I'm not sure. They're not over here. Yeah, so I'm sorry that I can't remember off the top of my head what that, does anybody else from?
Yeah, that was where folks were suggesting that we planted along highways. And we said,
and also by bus stops.
Yep.
For example, right. So some of that was beyond what the city could do. And we thought they were important points about engaging with MoDOT. And then there was in all of this discussion about how do we increase green spaces, the totality of green spaces that are in the city, which would be doing things like drilling more tree wells, or going down Southwest Traffic Way and actually having the center median strip feature growing things. That or removing parking lots and replacing them with green spaces. These were some of the suggestions that the public had. And we felt, because of the expense and the feasibility issues related to some of these things, that we needed a kind of prioritized feasibility plan for this incremental planting to increase the amount of green space and trees where the heat island effect is prevalent. By definition, when the heat island effect is present, it means there's a lot of smoking hot concrete there, and therefore that smoking hot concrete has to be either removed or shaded by vegetation, which can become an expensive thing. So we felt like we needed greater study and prioritization in order to achieve this important goal. I'll stop there and ask my team from Natural Resources, Bridget, Ellen, and Laura, if there's anything that I missed that you all think should be added.
Did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Bridget, anything else on soil?
Can you hear me all? I'm using new headphones. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
I can hear you.
And sorry if my internet's shoddy. I'm in the basement of Jefferson's, the Capitol. The only thing I was going to specify with the MoDOT situation, because I would love for them to kind of take the lead of Austin, Texas, with their bypasses and greenways. MoDOT currently does have a policy in place to basically plant native plants, get rid of invasive species, and don't mow. However, an issue is that it's just not very enforced. And if a neighborhood complains about their highway being overgrown, MoDOT will just go through and mow it. So it would be a little bit more interacting with the city and MoDOT kind of working hand in hand and like figuring out an educational aspect. With regards to soil, I think you nailed it. I think, and Laura did a great job of kind of summing up all of the comments we had on healthy soil. We don't have great soil in Kansas City, unfortunately. We also live in the lead belt. So there's a lot of issues that we need to do when it comes to soil health. So I think that that's worded pretty good. Anyway, just my 2 cents.
Thank you to Hillary Noonan for submitting basically a paper on the topic of soil, which we all read and did our best to address in our changes. So I think that's it. Robin?
All right. Thank you so much, Kristen and Bridget and Laura and Ellen, for that. Since Michael has joined us, I think I'll turn it over to him to walk through his analysis of public comments.
Thank you, Robin. My apologies to everyone for running late. Some late minute stuff came up with work. But one quick point of clarification, because I think it'll help me with my comments. Which sections have already been discussed? I know natural systems was just discussed. As any other sections have been discussed at this point? Okay.
That's it.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I will skip over the discussion on the natural systems and just kind of focus on the other sections. So give me just a second to pull up my desktop window here. Hope people are big fans of tabs. Okay. Can anyone see my screen? I need someone to say yes because I can't see your faces.
Yes.
Okay. So really quickly, what this was is, first off, thank you to everyone who submitted public comment for the plan. I know it was only one section of the type of community engagement that we wanted to try to get, but we do appreciate everyone who took some time to submit a comment in support of the plan or ways that we could improve this. So there were 765 total between the public and city that I received from OEQ, and thank you again to OEQ for organizing all of those. So basically what I did, what this is essentially going through and identifying within each of the kind of emphasis areas. So mobility, natural systems, energy, as well as things like implementation and equity, what some of the main themes were in terms of the comments. So trying to give kind of a high level explanation of what the comments were saying to kind of better inform the work of OEQ as well as the work of this committee as we try to take what the public said and work it into the plan. So this was separate from the work that was being done by the individual work groups. It was just meant to be another way, a supplemental way to kind of inform inform the committee of what some of the community input and feedback was on the plan up to this point. So you'll see that there are several common themes and theme percentages. So with each of the emphasis areas, there was several common themes. So basically, if several people or several comments spoke to something such as with energy supply, solar, wind, and geothermal, then that constituted a theme. And I picked all of the comments out that spoke to some aspect of that theme, and then also assigned a theme percentage. So the theme percentage is essentially the amount of times relative to the rest of the comments in that emphasis area that this specific theme showed up. So with going back to solar, wind, and geothermal, within the energy supply comments, that made up more than a quarter of all of the comments that were submitted by the public to OEQ through their website. So again, this is not to say that there weren't other forms of community input or feedback. I know that there were several, but in terms of what I received from OEQ, this is what I received and what I looked at. So this is organized very, very quickly in terms of the largest to the smallest in terms of emphasis area. So very, very quickly. With general, the big comment here that stood out was most of the comments were people wanting more specifics with regards to goals as well as benchmarks. And so many of these also spoke to the need to serve low-income earners, Black and brown people, and people who are experiencing homelessness. And that made up nearly 15% of all of the comments in the general section. Another big theme that emerged here was the emphasis on equity, inclusion, and justice. And so building on the more specifics part, this is meant to speak to the idea that we really do need to find as many ways as possible through the plan, but also through its implementation to support the needs and really lead with the voices of frontline and marginalized communities that are disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis. And that made up about 14%, so a little less than the more specifics. The third one was just plan adoption. So people who are speaking to this portion made it very explicit that they want us to adopt a strong climate protection plan. And what strong meant varied amongst these comments, but there was a very clear indication that they wanted a strong plan that is stronger than its predecessor back from resolution 20005. And that made up about 13.5%. Funding and incentives. There were comments here which spoke to the need for funds to support workers now and as some transition to green jobs, along with incentives for cleaner individual choices. And then the other big theme from general was workers and jobs. So comments here speaking once again to the need for workers to be included in the plan's implementation. And several of the comments in particular spoke to the need to find more training opportunities for the green jobs that are being created. With regards to energy was the second largest bucket of comments that were received. The largest theme comment was solar, wind, and geothermal. There was a desire here to further explore the capability of scaling up these sources, but also a clear desire for supporting the proposed solar array at the airport and more rooftop solar in general. Natural gas. In terms of the comments that I received from OEQ, there was a split in terms of the comments, with some people wanting to move towards transition and some wanting to sort of maintain the status quo. I do want to acknowledge that there were other forms of community input around this, but in terms of what I received, this is what it came out to. And that made up about 24%. In terms of energy choice, there was also a desire to not only define community choice further, but also to use community choice aggregation as a potential strategy on the issue of energy choice. And so several comments also spoke for a desire, which included the use of gas as well as others, such as the aforementioned solar and wind. And that made up about 18%. About 15% of comments in the energy section spoke specifically for the closing of the Hawthorne power plant and all coal-fired power plants soon thereafter. And then with electrification, there was again a split in terms of what people were wanting here, with some wanting to, with more people wanting to electrify than not as it broke out. And some also spoke to the need for greater consideration to health impacts relative to current sources like natural gas. And then the last one was supply and usage. So both city staff and public feedback requested more specifics on goals and benchmarks related to supply and usage. So the next one was with regards to homes and buildings. That was 102 comments for that. The biggest comment here was with regards to energy efficiency. So the main point being that we need to explore energy efficiency funds and better align efficiency with overall building performance. One of the big points here, just came up a lot, was just wanting to redesignate partners in terms of either being leads in some places or support in the other parts. And as much as it was showing up, I had to designate it as one of the comment themes. And that made up about 17% of the themes of the comments for homes and buildings. Another comment theme was the IEECE and building codes, mostly calling for the city to adopt the newer version of both of these codes, but also consider amendments which may better align with local circumstances. That made up about 15% of homes and buildings comments overall. Collaboration with tenants and renters. There was a clear request in the comments as well to more explicitly support the voices and needs of tenants, especially on aspects of energy performance and financing considerations. And that made up about 14% of the comments for homes and buildings. Looking for more ways to incentivize buildings through, or incentivize businesses through building policies, as well as education on available programs for local businesses, came up quite a bit as well, and that was 11% of the total comments. And then finally, financing. So trying to find more ways to pay for upgrades to city buildings. And this was mostly a city staff comment, but it made up 11% of the comments overall. The next one was mobility. And so there were several themes here, the biggest one being transit. This made up over 60% of comments for mobility. And so there was a big emphasis on things such as east-west connections, electric and zero emission buses, and with regards to development, a big emphasis on following the transit-oriented development policy more closely and supporting accessibility and working more closely with transit workers. Walkability. The big point with this was asking for a more robust effort to construct and repair sidewalks across the city, especially in parts of the city with little to no development, as well as a bigger shift on mode shift targets towards walking over the next few years as well. And finally, comments including improvements to public facilities and additions of public facilities, which could support the needs of families and young children. That made up about 32% of comments. Biking also made up about 32% of the comments. The main point of these comments was basically for the city to take more steps to make it safer to bike in the city. Several comments spoke to the need to adopt the proposed bike master plan and to build more protected and connected facilities. And finally, accessibility and ADA. So making up about 14% of comments overall. Comments here spoke to the need to ensure greater accessibility as a priority, especially with regards to transit and walkability elements. As I mentioned, I'll skip natural systems. Implementation, so it gets much smaller from here. So implementation, again, one of the things here was just trying to designate which partner should do what. That made up about 40% of the comments under implementation. And the other thing that came up under implementation was fuel source and purchasing considerations. A number of comments spoke to both the need to use natural gas as a bridge and heavy duty options becoming, mostly because heavy duty options are still needing to be established. So there was also a desire in the comments here to develop policies which better regulate fuel source and the use of commercial vehicles. Waste and materials, there are only about 21 comments here. The big two themes were, one, recycling. So finding more ways to educate the community about recycling, but also looking to try to find ways to provide recycling options for rental units and multifamily housing in a way we haven't before. The other big common theme was with waste reduction and trash efficiency. So here it was with regards to finding ways to improve trash pickup and limit spillage from trucks, and that made up about 28% of the comments. With food, the big things here were food systems and food waste. Specifically, the need for a system which is community driven, addresses food insecurity, and prioritizes regenerative agriculture. And then additionally, with local food, comments on this theme spoke about the need to find more ways to develop locally grown food, including a greater emphasis on working with local farmers. There were a few blanks, so they weren't really assigned to any particular bucket, but I did still want to sort of analyze them on their own because they weren't assigned anywhere. The first part was with aspects of implementation. So speaking to the need to support Black and Brown and Indigenous-led organizations, but also the need to identify more funding for the implementation and the organizations involved in that work. And then there was also support for a Green New Deal, which is obviously separate from the plan itself. And so trying to find ways to ensure that the most vulnerable portions of the community aren't left behind. And then the last one was there were 5 comments for equity. So the first big theme was with prioritizing policies developed in low-income communities and communities of color to ensure that they benefit most immediately from the strategies of the Climate Protection and Resiliency Plan, especially with regards to transportation, renewable energy, and affordable housing. And then there was another part about changing the language with the land acknowledgement. So moving away from the First Nations rhetoric, because this is something that's used more frequently in Canada, as well as acknowledging that Kansas City is the ancestral homelands of, and I apologize if I mispronounce any of these names, the Wazaze or Osage tribe, the Kanza or Kaw tribe, the Jaiware or Oto tribe, and the Nutachi or Missouria tribe. Oops, and I messed it up. And so the plan should also acknowledge that other tribes with ties to the land exist, including many who were removed from their ancestral homelands in other parts of the country. So I know I went through all of that very, very quickly, but if anyone has any pressing questions with that, please let me know. Okay, so
I don't really have a question. I just want to express my sincere gratitude for the amount of work you put into that. In the midst of everything else, we were all trying to do. So thank you so much.
I agree. Hear, hear. Michael, thank you.
Thank you. Well, if there aren't any questions, then I will just pass it back over to Robin, and we can continue on with the report back from the work groups.
All right, maybe I'll let you take a little break, Michael, and not make you start with mobility right now. How about we go next to Beth? Would you be ready to lead us through the energy supply work group?
Sure. Are we going to do the same thing as Krista did and Laura pull up the recommendations that we sent in?
Laura, do you have all those handy, or?
I have to find them in my email, but if I can. Did that one come from you, Robin, when you emailed, or did it come from Beth?
It came from me, and I can...
Oh, final edits. Found it. Okay. Hold, please. Is this the correct one, Beth?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So again, thank you, Michael. That's a good segue for me to explain our methodology that we used as we were processing the public comments. As Michael said, there were quite a bit of public comments for energy generation. And so when we were going through the public comments, we were noticing themes, as Michael was reiterating, as well as taking into account the latest IPCC report and the science that the IPCC report recommended to us, which happened to be published as we were processing these comments. So that worked out really nicely. And also wanted to make sure that we were really honoring the comments that were coming from folks who are disproportionately impacted by energy generation. So some of the big themes with energy generation, as Michael said, was the need to act quickly and urgently, while ensuring that these solutions do not leave anyone behind and actually address inequalities. We did refine the overview to better define that and spell out that utility scale renewable technologies provide a wealth of benefits to the grid, and also distinguishing that from decentralized distributed renewable energy generation, while making sure that we are prioritizing overburdened, underrepresented neighborhoods in these solutions. And so we did propose, benchmarks in order to guide us through that. And I believe Robin or someone will talk about implementation, but suggesting some initial benchmarks that we should really be prioritizing folks who are struggling to pay their utility bills, their energy bills, and recommending some benchmarks for us to start with. If you want to scroll down, we did provide sources for the new summary. And the vision that we wanted to spell out is also in line with the public comments, the IPCC report, and we also really want to iterate that this is Kansas City's vision, and this is what the people of Kansas City and the Climate Protection Steering Committee is urging the city to act on. And so we want to kind of distinguish that from other plans that exist right now, and make sure that we are really defining our vision as the community wants it to be defined, and as the scientists are telling us need to be implemented urgently. And so the other theme in public comments that stuck out to us was the need to set more specific benchmarks. And although that draft says X megawatts of distributed customer-owned solar, we do have a benchmark that we are proposing, and it's 110 megawatts that I believe will be defined further on in the goals. And so you can scroll down a little bit. We are setting the metrics for success as follows. So when we are expanding utility scale owned renewables, and I also do want to name that there is a lack of consensus in our subcommittee on this, but in spite of that, there's still a 3-to-1 opinion that the Hawthorne coal plant does need to be retired by 2025. And that is something that's been discussed at length on the subcommittee, but judging by the comments as well as the IPCC report, we felt it was important to maintain that be an indicator of success in terms of how we are meeting our goals, and also defining who will be leading us to that. If you scroll down a little bit, I also wanted to name that Public Service Commission intervention is a big priority for the Energy Generation Subcommittee. For those of you who do not know, the Public Service Commission is the appointed governing body who regulates our utilities, and it is the subcommittee. There was a consensus on this. The subcommittee believes that it's really important, in order for us to meet these goals, that the city starts intervening in the Public Service Commission. So we did reiterate that need multiple times throughout in terms of success. And you will see that here in terms of coordinating legal review, that is a metric of immediate success as well. And you can keep going down. I believe this is all the same. Again, we wanted to really continue to develop and refine exactly what we mean when we're talking about renewable energy. And so when we're talking about distributed energy, community, solar, this is energy that is decentralized energy that is community owned, and wanted to make sure that we are specifying, those goals and exactly what it's going to take to get us there. And so we determined that, again, a goal of 110 megawatts of new, distributed energy has been built. We also wanted to make note of Solarize KC, which is something that is already in motion. So Solarize KC is already a partner in this. And if you want to continue going down, and this is a couple of, suggestions that were further developed.
Finally! Let's get that wish granted. Spectrum Internet delivers fast speeds for a stronger connection on all your devices.
That might be
Here, yeah, and here. Good.
Sorry about that. That was a tab that I thought was inactive, but apparently it's not. And so this was just further defining, exactly what it means in terms of expediting residential solar. And so we included the solar app in that has been developed by National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And I believe if you want to keep going down, I believe those are the big highlights. And again, we could talk at length, keep going down to make sure I'm not missing anything. I believe those were the highlights, but I'll call in the, my fellow committee members to comment on something that I may be missing. Did want to distinguish between community choice and energy choice as well. I know Michael called that out, named that during the summary, and community choice is a legislation that will promote more community choice energy. So I will leave it there in the interest of keeping it high level, and also recognizing that there are overlaps with the decentralized energy programs that I talked about, that I think Bill will get to, because we received a lot of public comments about, displacement and things like that. And Bill's Homes and Buildings Work Group will get to that, into the nitty gritty of that a little bit more as well.
Beth, can I ask a question? This is Kristen. Did you all, are we bringing forth strongly enough the idea that energy efficiency is the first renewable fuel, that it's actually still less expensive than solar, and that would be a priority to do first before solar?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way that we approached it in energy generation, and I think that this comes up in homes and buildings as well, is that energy efficiency is, of course, and critically important. What the latest IPCC report has told us is that has to be targeted, and it has to be paired with equitable building decarbonization, in terms of being a part of a whole pie. So instead of administering energy efficiency in a way that prolongs fossil fuels, really making sure, and I'm stealing a little bit of your thunder, Bill, I'm sorry, but this was something that we talked about quite a bit in the homes and buildings section, making sure that the targeted energy efficiency is being used alongside building electrification, equitable building electrification. So we did talk about that, and that was certainly something that was expressed through the public comments as well. But I think that that's probably addressed more so in the homes and buildings section.
Okay, thanks.
Do any of my, are there any other questions, or do any of the other committee members want to fill in anything that I may have left out?
All right, thanks, Beth. I think in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and move on to. It's probably a good segue for Bill, since we were just talking about Bill. Bill, are you ready to kind of walk through at a high level, being mindful of time now being 5:50? We want to make sure we have enough time for public to give comments as well. So if you could keep it high level, that would be great.
Yeah, duly noted. And Laura, if you could go ahead and scroll on down, because our edits are a little further. Here we go. So a couple big themes, and Beth touched on them a little bit, is the challenges with the that we are having even now with the cost of housing with low-income people. How does that affect climate? Well, it disrupts their transit, jobs, things like that, their health, things like that. So we did want to emphasize in here that we are also supporting, efforts to slow down the housing affordability, crisis that's out there, which is across the United States. But we want to see how we can affect that as we work through the homes and buildings, and that can be anything from energy efficiency to, more shade to better HVAC, what have you. But we do want to be thinking of that systemically as we go through this. Okay, moving on down there. Okay, under strategy B4, promoting equitable building decarbonization. In the latest IPCC report that came out in the beginning of April, one of the points they made was we have to move strongly toward building electrification, which is building decarbonization by another name there. Also wanting to make that equitable. So we want to look at that and make sure people are not left behind, and decarbonization will be a combination, and Beth alluded to that based on Kristen's question. It's kind of a 1-2 punch there between electrification and energy efficiency, not in any particular order there. Each building could be a little different there, and how the city approaches it from their point of view with codes, incentives, what the city might be able to do. And then of course, education is a little broader brush right there. So anyway, moving on down here, additionally, intersection crisis, again, climate crisis, housing crisis. So we want to emphasize, we do not want to let anybody be left behind on this. Moving on down. We did change, or we added, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I can't remember now. Yeah, we split it up, industrial, commercial, and residential, into 3 parts there. So, we also wanted to note that part of Evergy's energy mix that was added by, taking over Westar changed their calculations a little bit there. So we put that in there. All right, moving on down. B1.6 and 2.3, working with Spire to prioritize, repair of large gas leaks, because there's been quite a bit of evidence that we do have that in there. So that would be, with the city and Spire specifically there. Moving on down. 3.4, besides promoting certain types of, passive home construction, but again, the word affordable in there. So we don't want this just to be the high-end stuff out there, but looking how we can make this affordable to a wider range of people there. And then just touching on equitable building decarbonization, we use the definition here from Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition. to remove the hazard of fossil fuel usage in buildings and facilitate access to carbon-free heating, water heating, and cooking while prioritizing, but not limited to the BIPOC intersectional identities, empowering poor, low and moderate income houses, undeserved communities with clean technologies and infrastructure. And again, we're looking at who we can help with this by letting them know about it, identifying who's most impacted by it, which, we have some of that. Kristen has, for example, some zip codes where we could really identify some of that, and how we can work through education and outreach and possibly funding, looking for funding for, a combination of, well, I'll just say decarbonization, which includes electrification and energy efficiency. So we'll just use the bigger term right there. Moving further down. And I'm going down to the fourth line here. To support the strategy, building decarbonization, the city will establish an equitable building decarbonization program. So that is something we're highly recommended. Lead through example. Again, cities, to have them move toward electric equipment beginning in 2022 for, their facilities on heating, cooling, and water heating there. And then, again, vision, city facilities is the next part, 100% by 2030. We did go ahead and set some goals for owner occupied and rental, 25%. We wanted to have something measurable right there and, for us to work on. So there it is. We have electrification and then air sealing and insulation improvements through there. Again, 1-2 punch there. And again, we made some assumptions here with some numbers. We wanted to come up with them to measure our success on here. So you can see those again right there. And if we could scroll on down. And note the city should not install any new gas-powered equipment in existing city facilities, but again, move toward electric as a way of being a leader on here. Moving down, was that it, or was there a little more? Yes. On financial assistance and incentives, again, we're not looking at mandates as far as electrification in any way, but if we can support it with, besides education, like a website where we can get information out, or something almost like a climate ambassador in some neighborhoods where you get more word of mouth with someone who's trusted in the neighborhood. I think it's something that we will want to visit here in the future. But anyway, besides that, have the city look for possible grants, other funding mechanisms, incentives. So again, carrots to work with electrification. Again, no one is telling anyone they have to get rid of their gas furnace here. Okay. And then they talked about, we talked about, different people to get to. Building owners, landlords, obviously, because tenants can't do much of that themselves. And then, homeowners themselves and things like that. All right, are we done? We got anything left? Is that the end? And I do want to thank Angela, Beth, and Robin on the committee. This was a very strong team effort on there, and I enjoyed working with everyone on that. So thank you.
Sorry, my mute wasn't working. Thank you, Bill. Why don't we go ahead and move on to the next section? So, Michael, are you ready to tee up mobility?
Yes, and I'll be as quick as I can. So.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Do you want me to share, or do you want to share, Michael?
Laura, if you're willing to share, I would greatly appreciate it. So. Thank you very much, Laura, and I want to thank Bridget and Kristen for their help with this. Like I said, I'll be very, very quick here. So the big thing here was needing to note strategies that are not prioritized by their numbering in the plan. The city needs to develop an agreed upon definition of gentrification that includes green gentrification for the purpose of future planning and policy. As much as it's coming up here and as much as it's coming up elsewhere, we just have to work to come up with a unified, agreed upon definition of what that is and what it entails. Scrolling down, adding more trees at transit stops. I'll note with M13 really quick that there was a big push for more parking policy improvements, and that's not just coming from us, that's also beginning to take shape already within the Public Works Department. In strategy M2.3, I did want to note, and I think Laura did make a change here really quick, that we wanted to say investing at least 3% of city transportation in bike and pedestrian infrastructure. We don't want it to just be limited to 3%. We want that to be at the very minimum what the city is spending, because it's spending less than that at the moment.
Michael, sorry, this is the one I pulled from my email. So this is, that change has actually been made in the final one, just not this one.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then just moving on down, things that have already been said here, a lot of it is around transit, improving anti-idling education. With short-term implementation, there was trying to kind of redefine who should be involved with that in terms of OEQ and Public Works, further on down. And then there were several people who wanted to see the introduction of some sort of free public electric and bike and scooter share program, extending that idea of free public transit, and yes, public restrooms being included as well. And then the last one I wanted to highlight is striving towards the goal of diamond or platinum bicycle friendly city designation by the League of American Bicyclists by 2040. Robin, back to you.
All right, thank you, Michael. Let's see, how about the waste group?
Yep. Laura, will you do it for me, because I might have to legitimately bounce in the middle of it?
Yes, so food and waste were done together. They had the least number of comments overall, so I'm gonna, give me just a second, I've got too many things open. I gotta find you guys.
I'll start by saying thank you to, I think we did a pretty good job covering everything in food and waste, and also to my teammates as well. And if I miss anything, I don't know if Tom's on here. I can't see him, but Angela, you could get on here. Okay, so food and waste. Basically, a lot of stuff that we added is just like kind of wordsmithy. For instance, action 5.1.2, we added regenerative agriculture instead of just having urban ag, because that aspect of healthy soil and no-till and crop rotation is very important with regards to agriculture. Yeah, I think we had made this recommendation beforehand, but it didn't make it into the final plan. But again, just promoting plant-based food consumption. And we were thinking about this with schools and stuff like that, so kids aren't forced to eat just like a bagel with, cream cheese, or dry if they're vegan. So yeah, just adding some more earlier, adding some more partners, schools in general, that has to do with like the plant-based stuff, and some of the recycling stuff I think is further down. Hospitals as well, restaurants, we want to have restaurants as supporting parties. We want to give restaurants, recognition if they're doing a really great job of having local urban food and healthy food. And then, oh yes, also library as well as an implementation partner. So that's really food. It wasn't a lot. It was mostly wordsmithing and just adding implementation partners. Waste of materials. This is basically to, we got the comment that the comprehensive solid waste management plan, we've actually been backtracking a little bit with recycling. And so we want to update and enforce better recycling and waste management practices. Again, kind of what Kristen was saying earlier, education is going to be huge, specifically with recycling. You know, the recycling system is very difficult. It's kind of made that way because of the oil and gas industry, and the Chemical Association as well, because they want us dependent on plastic, and we can't be. So again, another one is we have a preemption on banning plastic bags, single-use plastic grocery bags. The Missouri legislature has been trying to push that out to go containers, which are called polystyrene, or styrofoam is like the common name for it. And so we advocate for the reversal of the state level single-use preemption, which there is a bill currently, but it hasn't been heard, and I don't think it will be since there's only 2 weeks left. And then, so yeah, explore policies basically of how to get around that preemption. So government buildings, schools, private companies as well, try to push to have zero waste or reusable goods to take your food home in or what have you. Yes, this was a good comment that we got that we did not think about. Permit requirements actually for events such as, well, Boulevardier does pretty well on this because they're a zero waste company, but you know, any type of marathon, the KC Marathon, bike, any type of event, essentially, we need to have permit requirements to make sure that all of the trash is being sorted and taken care of in the proper manner for all events. And then this was something that came up actually with mobility and then also with waste, basically talking about embodied carbon with regards to construction materials that we use. For instance, like concrete versus asphalt. Asphalt is apparently better to use, or cement. I'm totally flipping that around. But basically, the stuff that we use can be used to actually take carbon, you know, and hold it into its material. So we're going to update the name and make a definition of this as well, and have that be a priority. Yeah, and so we have all of the manufacturing, transportation, installation, maintenance of all building materials. This is another one. This is kind of the same thing, reducing embodied carbon in construction materials. So looking for those materials that aren't actually increasing our heat island effect and are helping us with carbon capture. This is another one that we had suggested before, but it didn't get made into the plan, but we got plenty of input saying that they wanted it. So establishing a zero waste recognition for restaurants and businesses that do show that they are zero waste. And that's very similar to the restaurant establishment in the food section. Okay. This is, again, Michael kind of touched on this earlier. Explore alternative trash trucks designs to prevent garbage spillage. We thought that that was the best route instead of, you know, shaming, you know, the people who are picking up our trash. And then, yeah, sorry, now I'm like trying to remember all of this part. Advocate at the state and federal level for producer responsibility policies. I don't know if everybody knows what that is, but essentially putting the blame not on individual people, but actually manufacturers, and basically them having to either pay a tax or a fee in order to manufacture plastic and goods essentially into our city so we can reduce the amount of plastic waste that we're using and bad materials that we have overall. Did I get everything in there?
Yeah, because I think this was just a note that some
Yep.
implementation partners throughout various strategies that I just stuck in here, so I would remember to send it in.
Yeah. So that's it. I don't know if anybody has questions or if I missed anything.
Thank you,
All right.
Bridget.
Thanks, Bridget. All right, the final work group that we had was called prioritization, and I'll go ahead and walk us through that. If Laura, if you have that document handy to post up. Basically, there was two main things that the prioritization work group was focused on, and that was one, to make sure we had enough information about what strategies are going to get us the reductions we need in the time we need, and making sure that that was made really clear and transparent and easy to understand in the plan. Unfortunately, in our work groups, we realized we still don't have quite enough information that we need. So one note was that we would really appreciate the opportunity to have our work group or representatives from the work group work directly with Brendel, since they have some details that we need to really be able to flesh out what that summary table especially should look like. So we would like the opportunity to work with them as we finalize the plan to get that finished. And then we also, as a group, worked through a prioritization framework and took into account public comment to try to set some initial priorities, recommend some initial priorities for both what to get, what we want to make sure gets attention right away, immediately. We had, about 90 actions identified in this plan, and that's a lot. And we had over 40 of those actions were identified as immediate priorities, meaning this year. And so we attempted to set kind of about a top 10 to make sure that in the case that not all 40 gets attention right away, we at least wanted to set out some what we believe should be included in the top priorities for both immediate action or continued action, some underway, and also thinking ahead to the next budget cycle, what needs to be in there for the budget. So we don't have the numbers for budget cycle. And one of the, I guess, disadvantages we had was not really having costs for each of these actions to work with. So we did the best we can. So I'll just speak through this real quick. We just had a couple minor edits to that paragraph in the executive summary, again, to work through that kind of with Brendel to make sure we are wording things right and know what our limitations are. We suggested removing page 5 just because we if certain things aren't funded right now, we didn't want to assume that they won't be funded, or that we couldn't ask for them to be funded going forward. So we just recommended to take out that page 5. If you could scroll down a little bit more. We just want to make sure that our targets are changed to what the committee voted on at the last time, and work with Brendel on the language about whether things are going to be net zero or zero carbon, and just because it seems like to us we are working toward zero carbon, but we just wanted to work with them and see what the issues were with not changing that wording. And then scrolling down, we, again, since the climate committee is putting forth our recommendations for what should be prioritized, we just changed the language a little bit there. And then you can scroll down and see, I'll just walk through real quick what we've identified as priorities, and then that would probably be a good time to open it up for public comments. So we've got these here. So we identified, participating in the energy decisions at the Public Service Commission as a high priority because it has such a wide impact on everyone in Kansas City in terms of energy costs and also what our energy is sourced from. And we heard about accelerating the build out of sidewalks, complete streets, and protected bike lanes, supporting increased bus frequency and worker benefits, joining the Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition and establish a city-run equitable building decarbonization program, shifting city purchases away from gas-powered equipment starting this year. I know the 2021 building codes have been introduced at council now, so that's another one of our top priorities to ensure that that passes. Including some things in the state legislative priorities like clean energy and rent control, and continuing to protect and expand natural ecosystems, and also to make this process of prioritization more inclusive going forward, establish an environmental justice advisory council, which would have more community representation going forward, and have that council work to set priorities annually. And then we have those as similar budget requests, but I'll just leave that there and not walk through each one of those but one by one. So why don't we, I want to be respectful of everyone's time and give the public a chance to comment. So if anyone, I guess I would suggest opening up for public comment now and then having discussions among our committee. Okay. All right. So if anyone would like to either to speak directly to the committee, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'm going to switch over to the participant view. I see Adam has his hand up first. So Adam, go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Robin. Yeah, this is Adam Rossi from the 3rd District. I just want to say it's time to replace the Hawthorne coal burning power facility with renewable electricity, something that's been said many times throughout this meeting. As if we need any other more incentive or reason, I looked up some Clean Air Task Force data, and they attribute 5 deaths per year to the Hawthorne coal energy plant, along with 2 heart attacks, 52 asthma attacks, 3 cases of acute bronchitis, and 1 asthma-related emergency room visit. Within 3 miles of the Hawthorne energy plant live 35,000 people, 11,000 people under 18 years of age, 22 schools, 2 nursing homes. 44% of those people are people of color, and 32% live below the poverty rate, which is twice the statewide average. So it's time to do this thing, and that would include all coal plants, not just Hawthorne energy plant. So I call on Evergy and the Missouri Public Utility Commission to make that happen as soon as possible. Just want to thank everyone on the committee for all your hard work, as well as everyone who left public comment. Excited to make Kansas City even better going forward. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Adam. I saw Broden's hand up next. Broden?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Broden. I'm 22. I work in KCMO, and I'm a leader with the Sunrise Movement KC. Since moving to the area in 2017, I've worked in 3 different locations in the city. Each one has been a hazard to my health: an asphalt plant, a livestock pellet feed mill, and the WCA garbage and recycle transfer station, where the KCMO garbage trucks dump their loads. I'm speaking up today because the blatant disregard for environmental hazards that have gotten us into a climate crisis is directly affecting my quality of life. I want a commitment from the city to have the Hawthorne coal plant shut down as soon as possible while mobilizing that workforce with good paying union-backed jobs in the renewable energy field, doing things like manufacturing and installing rooftop solar throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Broden. All right, anyone else like to make a public comment at this time? I don't see any other hands up at the moment. Oh, there we go. Michael Wolf, I see you there. Go ahead, Michael.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Michael Wolf. I live in the 4th District. I'm a leader with Sunrise Movement in Kansas City. I was here in 2019 when the resolution 2005 was passed. That wasn't the resolution that Sunrise supported. We supported a resolution calling for a Green New Deal. Instead, they passed this and they adopted one piece of language from our resolution, which related to the stakeholder process in Section 5, which names a bunch of different groups and a transparent and inclusive stakeholder process. And I just want to remind the committee that while I'm grateful for all of your work, this process has been far from transparent or inclusive. And most of those groups, I suspect, with a lot of evidence, were not actually included in this process going forward. And so my comments today and what the edits that I want this committee to adopt reflect my work as a community organizer engaging many of those groups. So I would like the committee to support edits to this plan that prioritize total public and private decarbonization by 2030, push to close Evergy's Hawthorne coal plant as soon as possible with a just transition for all utility workers, and to explicitly name prioritizing frontline communities, the stakeholders in Resolution 2005 for rooftop solar and building retrofits. And this plan must not name natural gas as any sort of bridge fuel. And while the city cannot ban natural gas hookups, it should not prioritize it or give contracts to implementation partners that are pushing this narrative. That's climate denial. And there are people who are pushing for this, and we need to stop this. Like, this is ridiculous. You're not an environmentalist if you're pushing for natural gas. I don't care. I also think that this plan needs to name prioritizing permanent, affordable, accessible, and safe green housing for all as defined by Kansas City tenants, not rely on tax incentives as a strategy for green development. And the plan must also name an expanded convenient bus service where convenient includes routes that run east to west and include wait times on average of 5 to 10 minutes or less, all while raising bus worker wages and improving conditions for them as defined by bus worker unions. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Layla has her hand up next. Go ahead, Layla.
Hi, everyone. My name is Layla, and I am a KCMO resident and a leader with Sunrise Movement Kansas City. I am very excited about a lot of the edits that have been proposed so far. I think it shows, frankly, that when the community comes together to really push back against some of the special interests that come to the table, we can come together to promote really awesome solutions. So I want to thank those of you who have been working really hard, who came out to the People's Climate Town Hall, who heard and saw all those comments that were uplifting our demands. And I really want to name one specific thing that I'd like to really ask that you all vote for today, which is that we need to really make sure that implementation into this plan is not put into the hands of groups or entities that are using natural gas as a bridge fuel. And the reason why is this is not about banning gas, which has already been preempted by the state. We cannot do that, which was a huge point of misinformation that was put into the comments against some of our demands. But this is just comes down to health and science. You know, gas is quite literally a hazard to our health. Gas plants explode. You all literally noted that in your comments, and it's hurting the indoor air quality of people right now. And please be thinking about the fact that if we put natural gas as a bridge fuel, you are co-signing and allowing new pipelines to be built, entire generations of infrastructure to be used in the name of a bridge fuel that will last for decades. It is not something that we'll use for 5-6 years until renewable comes around. It will be something that has an impact for decades to come, and we cannot risk putting people's lives and health on the line just to make certain people, certain gas executives happy. And I'm saying this not to sound divisive, but because we just simply do not have the time to invest in false solutions. And I am so excited about the edits that have been proposed, but let's do the right thing. Let's make sure implementation partners are on the same page about building electrification and a real, true, equitable, clean energy revolution that can protect our communities.
Thanks so much, Layla. I see one more hand up, David.
Yeah, David Johnson. I'm a resident of the 4th District, and I just wanted to reiterate my chat comment and make sure everyone caught that the city should increase its spending on public transportation rather than keeping it flat or in decline. Money is diverted annually for non-transit public works uses. Unfortunately, that's allowed under the half-cent public sales tax that was authorized by the state legislature in the 60s, and that continues to this day. That tax is growing at current rates, the sales tax, and that money needs to stop being diverted for non-transit uses. And I applaud the Sunrise Movement for encouraging high-frequency transit, especially east-west connections. That additional funding could be used for that kind of service. Thank you.
Thanks, David. All right, I see a couple more hands, but I am also looking at the time and know that we would like to vote on these before the end of the meeting. Michael, do you have any any suggestions?
Are people willing to go a little bit past 6:30 so that we'll have enough time to discuss and vote on these? Like, is there any, and this is really for the committee members, is there anyone who absolutely has to drop off at 6:30? Okay, assuming
I think
that
I'm the only
there,
one. Oh,
I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
was just saying, I think I might be the only one who will have to disappear quickly, but they're still on the chamber floor, so I think we're good for a little while.
Okay, so here, Robin, I'll take care of this. So really quickly, we definitely want to give people a chance to speak, but again, we are running up against the clock, so we want to hear you, but please, if you can, make your comments somewhat to the point so that we have enough time to discuss the comments. We really do appreciate it. So Raymond, we'll let you go, or I'm sorry, Zoe, we'll let you go first, and then Raymond.
Hi, I'm Zoe Wilson. I'm a leader with the Sunrise Movement, and I'd just like to go back to, I know you guys talked about it in the plan just a little bit, green, social, affordable housing. I just want to reiterate that that is so important that we get it right, that we get it, that not only does it happen, but it's done well. We need it to be affordable, obviously. It needs to be green, and it needs to be made with carbon neutral materials, and to be long lasting. Like, we need this to be something that we can invest in and have for a long time, and it continue to stay affordable. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Raymond, I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Raymond Forstatter. I'm a resident of the 4th District and a leader with Sunrise Movement KC. I just want to reiterate my support, as others have, for shutting down the Hawthorne coal plant as soon as possible. And I also want to flag that private comments submitted to the city by both Evergy and Spire continue to provide false information, stating that electrification and moving towards renewables will increase costs for consumers, and that these are fear-mongering scare tactics that utility monopolies continuously use, and these same utility monopolies are at the same time lobbying both Kansas and Missouri for rate increases. So they're really just looking out for their profits as their executives get millions in bonuses. Both these companies and organizations that take their money to greenwash should not be considered good faith actors in this process. And companies like Spire have even infiltrated the public comment for this, having employees of their company submitting public comments, passing themselves off as members of the public with no conflict of interest. And I think that that's something that should be taken into account when we're addressing the public comment in support of natural gas, that, you know, and an easy search can see that these are in fact, or at least some Spire employees that are submitting these these comments with conflicts of interest. I just want to finally say that retrofits, weatherization, rooftop solar, and more must all be prioritized in disinvested communities, and that it's imperative that language in this plan and future legislation specifically protect against green gentrification from these projects. Thanks.
Thank you, Raymond. Billy?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, my name is Billy Davies, he, him pronouns, and I am a resident of the 6th District. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak and for extending time. Would like to express appreciation for the very thorough edits and deliberation done by each and every one of the committee members. And that we'll start by just saying, please vote yes on this draft plan that you put together and send it to the council so it can be adopted and we can begin implementation. Just will say again, as you've heard already, we have a lot of work to do, and you all have come a long way. That is to say, while they're acknowledging the immense amount of work that we'll need to carry on in implementing this work, and I appreciate and lift up all the comments stated by my friends and neighbors who have spoken already. I just would express appreciation for this committee in how far you've already succeeded and already begun just by having these meetings and striving, although there is important areas of improvement, to center community engagement and public voices in helping shape these important policies. I believe it has made Kansas City a leader already, and I just want to, as someone who's starting to plan a family and looking ahead, I'm feeling much more confident, and I appreciate all of your work over the last couple of years to raise the level of discourse in our region and set an example for others to follow. But yes, with that, thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and please vote yes to approve this updated draft plan.
Okay. Thank you, and I'll just note Eslin's comment. There should be no language advocating for continuation of natural gas usage in this plan. Natural gas and other fossil fuels are the causes of the crisis that we are setting out to avert. How can we make progress and move forward, leaning into propping up natural gas? So if there are no further public comments, then going back to Robin's earlier point, I'll just pass it back to you, Robin, and I think we should discuss.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I think let's just go ahead and open it up for any questions or comments any of the committee members have now about any of the work group recommendations.
I'll just say really quickly, I do appreciate everyone's work on this, including the staff who have been working with the individual work groups, as well as providing us with public comment. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have anything more, at least at the moment. So I'll just shut up. So. I will hop back on to ask if anyone else has other comments. Okay, so hearing none, Robin, I think and maybe Laura, can you help to clarify here? Is the move at this point, is it that we need to basically adopt the proposed changes and make a recommendation to City Council? What exactly would be the best approach here?
I think we kind of decided that you all were going to vote on each individual section as a committee on whether or not you are going to support it. And then based on that, we'll send everything over to Brindle for inclusion in the plan. And there'll be some items, obviously, that we'll have to have more dialogue since some of
Right.
them require some time with Brindle. But then once you guys vote on it, we'll send it over. We'll see what we can do, comments and things we can change, we will change. If something comes back that we can't change it for some reason, we'll get back to you on that. And then Brindle has 2 weeks to incorporate and all of these changes, and then we'll give the plan internal city administration to look at, and then back to the CPSC once we have that final plan ready.
I don't think I
Understood.
would be comfortable making a recommendation for city council right now, considering there's still a number of steps.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Just
So-
vote.
Yeah, this is just for the, this is Ann, this is just for Brendel to accept your changes.
Okay. Okay. So so then just understanding that it's not going to council yet. Thank you for the clarification. It's going back to Brendel for some additional work. Thank you both for the clarification on that. I'm willing to make a recommendation to start to for the CPSC to adopt the recommendations related to mobility. Can I get a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, mobility is accepted. Let's see. Okay, yes, noting Eslin's comment about having the ability to review. Thank you for noting that. Natural systems. I'll make a motion for us to approve the proposed changes for natural systems. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Bill. All those in favor of approving natural systems, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Natural systems passes. Moving on, I'm making a motion for homes and buildings to be, for those changes to be approved. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, I think that was Angela who seconded. Oh, sorry.
It was Kristen, but it doesn't matter.
I think we both did at the
We're
same time.
interchangeable.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Okay. Food and waste, making a motion to accept the recommendations and changes for that. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. And then energy recommendations. I'm making a motion to approve those. Can I get a second?
Second.
Hey, Michael,
Yes.
I'd like to explain my vote before we vote.
Okay.
Yeah, so Evergy submitted comments supporting several items in this section. However, I'm going to vote no. Evergy works with the Missouri Public Service Commission annually to update an integrated resource plan that uses factual analysis to plan our ongoing transition towards cleaner, more renewable energy. While this goal and this plans are laudable, they are not feasible today and result in less reliable energy supply, including the very real possibility of rolling blackouts for Kansas City and the region. Evergy has reduced its carbon emissions by 50% versus 2005 levels. We continue to add renewable energy to our energy mix, including planned additions of utility-scale solar at Hawthorne Generating Station. And while I'm voting no, we'll continue to work collaboratively with the city on its climate implementation plans as we collectively move towards net zero goals.
Understood. And thank you for your clarification. Does anyone have any additional comments? Hearing none. A motion to accept energy recommendations. Can I get a second one more time?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? There's one opposed. Motion passes. Okay. And then I think the last one was prioritization. Motion to accept prioritization changes and recommendations. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of accepting the prioritization recommendations, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Floor is yours, Robin.
Okay. Great. I think we're through our agenda today. Just want to mention again some next steps and maybe have Andy and Laura weigh in with that as well. As you stated, this will go to Brendel now to finalize the plan and send in. Andy, can you walk through the next steps again? I'm getting confused again.
Sure. So I think next steps appear to be Brenda will work on this for the next 2 weeks, and we'll work through whatever issues are still outstanding with the steering committee on the prioritization and all that. And we should probably talk on the side about what that looks like, just so in terms of funding, in terms of our contract, we've overshot our budget on this, and I want to make sure we don't keep pushing it. So we'll work on whatever those constraints might be, but we'll work through that over the next 2 weeks with Brendel, and then whatever the compiled plan is after that. I've been asked by the city manager to provide a draft to him and the assistant city managers for them to review. And then from that point, I think with the blessing of the executive team and all that, to bring it back to the steering committee for their adoption approval before we take it to council. And I think with council, what's being probably suggested at this point is we would then, once the steering committee approves this, I would take it to council, share the plan at that point with them. Also do a business session, so we could do a presentation there. Business sessions don't allow the opportunity for public testimony, so we'll take it to business session. We'll draft a resolution for adoption of the plan, and that would allow then to introduce that to a legislative session. Of course, we go through a committee, and at the committee, whichever committee gets to sign this, I'm not quite sure if it's transportation, infrastructure, or whether this goes through finance and governance. Then once we go through a committee, the public can testify at that point as well. So they'll have another opportunity to comment on the plan at that point as well. Not sure what the time frame is between the business session and the resolution. That kind of depends on how much time the city council wants to take to review the plan and whether they have questions or concerns or whether there's additional meetings between stakeholders and the council. So council can take as much time as they like to talk to groups still. That's still a possibility. So I don't want to pin this down to a specific date. We're hoping, realistically, maybe first week in June, factoring all the time for Brendel to finish up with, and then having this committee to give its final approval. So factoring in June, I'm hopeful early June, mid-June, somewhere in there. But we'll just keep pushing along, and we'll plan accordingly the legislative and get things scheduled as soon as we're at the right point. Is that all?
I think. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, this is Kristen. I just wanted to throw in that an overriding concern that I have about the entire plan is we're asking for so much in it, and I think I feel great about the things that we're asking for, but we have no reality check on it in terms of the relative costs of these different things. And I know I brought this up some weeks ago, and we've overspent our budget with Brendel, but there are other plans like, let's say, the Ann Arbor plan, where we could at least give some idea to City Council of the relative cost of these measures. And I rely on Andy and Laura to say at what point we would do that, at what point we have the bandwidth to actually think about the relative costs. But without that, I feel like it will improve the credibility of our plan if we can have some of those reality checks on it.
Do we want to try to set a date for our next committee meeting, or do you want to leave that as to be determined once you talk to Brendel?
I think it'd be good to just defer to with Andy and just kind of wait until Brendel's done their work, because there's not really much for us to do in the interim.
Yeah, I'd rather float for right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're good with that. We can float it. And who knows with between Brendel and the steering committee, what other issues we have to resolve before we get
Right.
there.
But shooting for sometime the second half of May, it sounds like, or
Yeah, I think
towards the end of
tentatively
May.
we planned for the 23rd would be the next. I believe we pushed it back over.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so stay tuned, but that's kind of the ballpark. Okay, all right. Well, thank you. I guess, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know that we've already went over, but there are some outstanding answer or questions in the chat that I'm wondering if we could answer real quick. I don't think they're that tough of questions.
Floor is yours, Beth. Go for it.
It looks like there's a question on if there will be meetings published, meeting minutes published on the edits that are being sent to Brendel. I'm not as familiar about the minutes publishing process, so that's for somebody else to answer.
So are we talking about the minutes for this particular meeting? So yes, I mean, the minutes.
They're talking
Yeah.
about all of the documents that were used to vote on being included in the minutes.
Oh, I got you. So I think, Laura, did you have a response? I mean, it cut you off. It sounded like you were.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, I think we need to talk with with Robin and Brendel and at this point we've done. Our intention was to put all of the public comments that we've received in the final supplemental documents as part of the climate plan. At the end of when this project is done, everything was going to be made available. So these particular documents that the steering committee has been worked on, I guess, haven't come up. But if the steering committee is amenable to it, I don't see any problem with it.
To include them as part of the minutes for this meeting. I think I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we could do it as part of this the meeting minutes for this and also the supplementary documents to the whole plan at the end of the project.
It will for sure be in the supplementary documentation.
Okay. Yeah. So Robin, I guess I'll leave it to you to decide whether you want it as part of the minutes for this particular meeting. That's fine. Either way.
That's fine with me. And then it would be a little bit, available a little faster.
Okay. We'll attach them to the minutes when they're done.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I am ready to adjourn now.
Thank you. Thank you for flagging that, Beth. All right. So motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good
night.
evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you all.